Hoje nós vamos conversar um pouco sobre a tarefa missionária, porque é uma tarefa que está sendo muito desenvolvida entre nós, então teríamos que ter uma visão ampla e ao mesmo tempo bem clara, bem nítida do que nos cabe fazer e no que estamos participando. Bem, a palavra missão é muito ampla. Missão é uma palavra universal. Tanto assim que o universo promove missões em determinados planetas. Então o universo, por exemplo, pode enviar uma consciência de Sírios em missão na Terra. Como já aconteceu, chegou o emissário de Sírios, passou algumas encarnações aqui na Terra para ensinar a humanidade a fazer o trajeto da mente concreta para a mente abstrata.
Today we will talk about the missions and we will begin saying something about what Paul Branton used to say, that he was a missionary of Syrians. When he finished a series of his books, he returned to Sirius when he finished his mission. And some other missionaries, the Earth receives missionaries from Jupiter, for example, that comes here in order to teach certain things that by themselves, by ourselves, we won't have the chance to learn. Usually they incarnate in here and they accomplish their task in here. And now today we won't talk about these very wide and important missions because we have done many recordings about this. Today we will talk about the missions in between us because this is our task nowadays. Well, the word missionary comes from the word missionar, mission, which means to decimate, to spread. So, to mission of a missionary that spreads, that disseminates, that takes something. And in overall, a missionary, in our case, the missionaries, those that come to missionary, to disseminate, to spread, are our missionaries who are in charge of spreading good uses, positive spiritual habits, and not the regular life. So the missionary, it comes to disseminate positive habits in our case. There's no other mold in this, just a very positive behavior, a behavior outside the middle, because it is a matter of being disseminating positive things. So a missionary receives a task or it proposes to do a task. It can be an independent missionary, or it can propose to do something else and goes there until complying with it. Now, the mission is an incumbency that the person or the group assumes. In our case, we are assuming mission in group, as we are seeing through the sharings that we received and through the lectures that we will still have, communicating our activities regarding this matter. So a mission is an incumbency that we assume personally or that we assume in group. When it is a conjuncture of people that are called to fulfill with a task, this set of people are involved with mission in some other countries sometimes. in some cases in distant regions, as in our case, for example, that we will see how many missions we fulfilled, even in some other continents. So the missionary, it proposes to disseminate positive habits, to disseminate positive things. A missionary with this name never goes to or does a negative thing, a negative task. A missionary is connected with the positive things. And then we will stay in this subject because our ambit is spiritual, which means let us stay with the missionaries themselves. The universe, when promotes missions, as is the case that we mentioned previously, the universe, when promotes missions, it uses certain rays of its energy. You know that the universe emits energies, the creative rays, and regularly when the universe emits a call for a mission, it uses the ray of the devotion. It uses the energy of the devotion. It doesn't use some other energy, just the devotion. And of course, that everything that comes as an order from the universe, in our case, in this era, in this planet, is implicit. The second ray, also the love of wisdom, which means that the love of wisdom is something that must be always present in a mission. Now, the universe promotes the missions, uniting the love of wisdom with the devotion. Devotion is the sixth ray. That is a main energy in the cosmos. Devotion is a fundamental energy. And the devotion is something that when it begins to be developed in us, the ray of the devotion, when this begins to be developed, the human, through devotion, begins being a devotee of the instruction, a devotee of the love, being a devotee of the service. Then it relates with all of the energies during the mission through the love of wisdom and the devotion. A missionary acting without love, wisdom, and without devotion is impossible to exist, because devotion is what connects with the higher levels and to those feelings and to the higher goals. So, to humankind, to humans that have devotion in the heart and love wisdom also developed to verify if is in charge of a mission, if it is in charge of a task. And what is the task of a missionary and an ordinary task in some other area, sector? A missionary is connected with the love, wisdom, and with the devotion. Without these two energies, there's no mission. There's nothing such as a spiritual mission. There's no mission in the meaning that we are talking in here, and that we are in a certain way with the energy of the work preparing some people for this activity that is one of the most important ones for the universe. Well, then, so, to the human that has a task with a mission, they need to comprehend these two missions, these two energies, the love, wisdom, and the devotion, because one of these energies being absent, there's no mission. It's something that it could be developed, but it's not a full mission. Till these days, the human consciousness has been very centered in itself, in oneself. An ordinary human nowadays is concentrated in itself. Everything is around its ego. Everything goes around the problems that it has. Everything emerges in the name of the goals that are imagined, that are set. this is an ordinary human. A missionary, no. A missionary, it is not like this. If a missionary is connected with the devotion, it does not think about this, about what is the best for itself. It's connected with the devotion and wants to know then what is the mission, what is the task. And the energy of love, wisdom, and devotion, and some other energies that in a second place entered, is what promote this missionary movement. When our missions that in general are in a missionary movement, and this when beings dedicate themselves to the love, wisdom, and to the devotion to fulfill with a mission, it began by having a process in the missionary itself. It's a process of upliftment of the life. The life begins to be uplifted. And if the missionary opted for this, or if it was called for this, and if the missionary gives the steps for this, naturally it will begin to be uplifted. So a missionary that begins, or a missionary that begins with in a determined cycle of its work, it begins to be uplifted because the energy of the devotion, when is assumed, uplifts the individual. So a missionary is someone that even though is in physical difficulties, even though is in material situations of the work, it will innerly feel always uplifted. A missionary that does not feel uplifted in the work, a missionary that does not feel up during the work that accomplishes, is a missionary where some other energies predominate, but not the devotion. This energy of the sixth ray, it is not very into the humans, but the energy of the sixth ray is the same one also that in the vegetal, the plant kingdom, makes that the trees grows up. The trees grows to the heights, and is the devotion, the sixth ray, what takes them to the heights. The energy of the sixth ray is what makes them to be attracted to the light. So the trees are attracted to the light, and is the sixth ray what erect them. So the plant kingdom, this brother kingdom, is very related with the energy of the missionaries. So the missionaries, while they are working, they are feeling erected, they are feeling uplifted. And also, as incredible as it might sound, it's good to know that this very same energy that maintains the missions, this same energy of the devotion is in the plant kingdom that uplifts the trees to look for the light, and is also in the animal kingdom. And how come that the animal kingdom has the energy of the devotion? It begins feeling an attraction to the domesticity. An animal that has attraction for the domesticity, for the fact of being in company with humankind. This is an animal that has a lot of the sixth ray. It's an animal in which essence is predominating the sixth ray that made the animal to look for the domesticity, to look for this encounter with the domesticity to might be fulfilled. So we've got the sixth ray, we've got the missions, right, that has their very intimate relation with the trees, with the animals. This is why a missionary, when assumes an animal, that animals in overall lives very happy because the sixth ray in there is working. Well, from the point of view of the energy, we are dealing with the love wisdom and with the devotion when we talk about the missionaries. Good. Now, let us see a little bit for us to comprehend what we're talking about and what we are not talking about when it's about the missionaries. We will see a little bit the history, the missionaries in the history, or the missions in the history, better to say. This is a term that has a lot of hidden work, but who founded the missions was Gautama, was Buddha. In the teachings of Buddha, there were transmitted through the teachings, the energy was transmitted outside India through beings that were sent there to diffuse. So the first missionaries were Buddhist. The first missionaries emerged in India, and it seems those that study, those that search, that may have had their confirmations, they say that this began in the 272 year before Christ. When Jesus incarnated, the missions already existed in India for almost 300 years before. This movement already began, and this impulse came with the Buddhism that sent the people traveling, going through, sent them in mission to transmit the teachings, to transmit what back then they considered the truth. Now, in the 68th year before Christ, the Buddhism began with this 280 years before Christ. Then Jesus came, and then in the 68th year after Christ, two Buddhist missionaries in India arrived to China. They began the missions in the West, in the Middle East. So the missions spread then in the whole Asia. So everything began before Jesus in order to prepare his arrival, but diffusing the Buddhism, diffusing the energy of the Buddhism. That is our very same energy, but with a different shape of being presented. Well, Jesus, when he saw that he also needed to spread a teaching, he orientated his disciples to go into around the world to taking his message. So Buddha introduced the missions, and Jesus used the missions. Jesus used this to spread his teachings. Only that Jesus said in the group of two. We don't know why he said that in two. This is a mystery, but there are certain things that cannot be done by one. So by two, going in two, it means that you will diffuse the teaching not by yourself, because there always has to be a combination of energies for the teaching to not stay very rigid. So a missionary that goes out there by itself has a great responsibility of not being rigid, of not being individualist. But if they go out in two, as Jesus asked to his disciples, this risk doesn't exist, because one missionary helps the other. One missionary mixes the energy with the other energy of the missionary, and the teaching becomes wider. Well, within this very same concept, the apostles were the very first Christian missionaries, were those that Jesus asked to go into. But it was Paul of Tarso, the first one who took as missionary by himself as missionary. This teaching, this Christic teaching, the teaching of Christ to the Greeks and the Romans, all of this is history for you to see all of the experience that exists through a missionary that nowadays plays itself to go through the world and in action. How many stories exist, how many vases have been built, all of the experience that was lived. And nowadays we only have to look at a little bit and see that we need to go on, to continue the movement, because this movement has been existed since Buddha going through Christ and now needs to go on, and this will continue infinitesimally because this comes from the universe, from the cosmos. The cosmos gives missions, and we are this drop from the cosmos, this half drop from the cosmos. When we are in a mission, this is very good for us to redimension ourselves, because one of the main things of a missionary is humility. So a missionary that believes that is a great thing, it isn't a missionary. It is humble, it is devotee and humble. In the devotion, humility is included, because you need to be humble in order to be a devotee to something, which means that humility, it is included in there. And it's really good to remember this, because when a mission begins to work, pride can come. Are these human things that aren't related with the energy that is being developed? Many other missionaries emerged, and many that even have problems, because, for example, when Ignacio de Loyola, that was a great founder, he sent missions when America was officially discovered, because America has been discovered a long time ago. There were people who knew America, who were in America, but well, the Europeans say that they discovered America with something that it was already very well discovered. But well, the Europeans discovered America. When they arrived to America, they brought the missions. Ignacio de Loyola had this task that he made it in the best way that was possible, because his intentions were very pure. On the other hand, the missions that came, the Jesuits, that were the Jesuit missions that were taught by Ignacio de Loyola, they came here, they founded convents, schools to may work their ideas, but those missions founded all of this, only that these missions began when there were missions with the indigenous, and the indigenous went to work in the houses, and the Indians were paid, and the missions kept the salary of the indigenous. So in here, some energy began to enter that was asking something in return, something that it wasn't good, and some other subject that when you hear the lectures of Mother Maria Shimani that were already recorded, you will see all of the matters that took place, and you will comprehend better what happened with the indigenous people from here, from America. So we have a very delicate landscape, because the Jesuit movement entered in collapse, it was dissolved, and then it returned, but with some new proposals. But well, in the current times, some groups of missionaries were always interested in diffusing creeds, religious creeds, and this is not at all our case. We've got any kind of religious creed to diffuse. Our groups are to uplift the beings, to look for uplifting the habits, to harmonize the habits, and we do everything that is possible, but we do not have a religious goal. This needs to be very clear because there's people that could help us a lot, but not in a religious meaning. Religious meaning is something that comes when the beings are looking for a contact with the upper levels. They look for connecting with the higher levels, and there when they begin to wanting to connect, to truly connect to the upper levels, then this religious principle comes, something that it is not related at all with the religion itself. Religion, it is an act of reconnect with upper levels, which means that the missions that we are doing, there is any kind of religious idea, only to uplift the individual so that the individual itself reconnect with the upper levels. If this is considered religion, then we are religious, but it is a religious that we need to explain what it is about. That we are not teaching catechism to anyone when our missionaries, that are some of them monks of the Grace Mercy Order, they are monastics of the Grace Mercy Order, they're there in order to uplift the beings. This is the main, the fundamental role. Those missionaries that have as a motivation of life the exercise of the charity and of the love to the other, this is fundamental. It is not to spread religion. The fundamental are the missionaries who want to place the exercise of the love to the other and of the charity, naturally beginning with themselves, that they need to have love to the others and that they need to be there with an energy of a lot of charity. This is fundamental. And this was the idea of Mother Teresa of Calcutta. It is a great missionary. Now, this charity and this love to the other, it was presented in a way that the church didn't like it a lot. But in their Mother Teresa, that was born for that in India, in Calcutta. She was a great missionary. She had the chance to found the Missionaries of the Charity, and the Missionaries of the Charity brought this purity that they didn't want anything from anyone. They just wanted to give themselves. So this is what Mother Teresa did when she came, giving this form to the mission, and this was regenerated, and things began to enter in some other plan. In the past, the Jesuit missions were closed, but then Mother Teresa came and she opened the order of the Missionaries of the Charity. That is an order that is a great grace for us to be participant of it or to help them. The first country that received outside India the missionaries of Mother Teresa of Calcutta was Venezuela, which means that nowadays when we are doing missions looking for helping Venezuela, this karmically Venezuela has the right for this, because Venezuela was the first country that had a house of Mother Teresa of Calcutta, which means that what we are doing nowadays in the benefit of the refugees from Venezuela, of the immigrants from Venezuela, it is not a favor at all. This is something that the soul of Venezuela has a right to it. and we are only retributing something that began in Venezuela, because it was the pioneer of receiving a house of Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Mother Teresa at the beginning has her difficulties, but she, by being a higher spirit, she resolved all of this, she overcame this, and everything stood in peace, in harmony, that missions should be. Well, with this aspiration, the aspiration of harmony, of order, aspiration of not wanting anything, we are not doing missions to receive anything, not to grow, not to be known. There's no interest at all in here, and this, any missionaries when enters needs to have this in the blood, because it is not about anything to use nothing. The meaning of charity is a meaning of mission, and that's it, but nothing for the benefit or anything, that it is not related with charity itself. Charity, and that effort to uplift everything, to some other level. So it's with this aspiration that we are working and that we are building the missionary task in the fraternity, right? In the International Humanitarian Federation. And this fraternidade takes its missions to missionary humanitarian missions, and there's no idea of anything else. It's a path within the evolution, within the principle of the evolution of doors that we try to open for beings that are in very hard situations, and that then we will have the chance to know once we begin to see the videos that had been presented. Well, this is about to collaborate in the inner activation of the potential of the souls, and not to create operators, nothing of this. This comes if it needs to come, but the missionaries of the fraternidade, the missionaries are collaborating in the inner activation of the potential of the souls. So a missionary is doing this with each indigenous, with each immigrant that is dealing with. It is aiming, it is there to nourish the potential of each soul, and there comes the ability, the love that is in the heart, the devotion that it has for the work of the missionary in order to accomplish the activation of the inner potential of the person that is dealing. So this would be, or these are our missions, is to develop the inner potential in the indigenous or in the immigrants, right? This is the task, is the inner potential that must be developed. For this, the missionaries naturally would have to help material situations, many material situations, right? Material situations inclusive of pain, of health, material situations in basic necessities. And this is the main task when they donate themselves. A missionary won't be a missionary to know the Amazon. It will go to mission to do these things. This is why it's a missionary. And it goes in order to fully donate for this, because if it's not fully donate, it creates a point of resistance. At the moment that a missionary is thinking of itself or doing the things in the way that thinks that they can do it, it placing in there a point of resistance so that the mission do not happen. Mission has to happen with the instinct and observing in detail the signs that we received? Well, we are sending missions, having missions since 2011. Has been 5 years since our mission began to happen, and this we are doing this lecture just now because we have 5 years of searching, of seeking, of humility, in the meaning of looking for to try to do the best, not in our way, to do the best as it should be done. And this, a missionary needs to know what it is. This, a missionary needs to have the intuition to know what it is about. Well, we've done in these 5 years, in the past 5 years, 12 missions, and are 2 right now taking place, and that are working, that are usufructing from the experience of the first 12 missions that we got. We did missions in Nepal, Asia, in Nicaragua, in Central America. In 2012, we had missions in Ethiopia, in Africa. We did 4 missions in Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, and 2 in Ethiopia, 1 in Kenya, and we learned a lot with them. There was a missionary of ours that went there and came totally transformed. No one knows what happened, but she turned a key. It is not the same one who went there. It came back someone completely different. Well, then we got missions in Lagoas, in the northwest, in the northeast of Brazil. We had one in the city of Mariana, in the state of Minas Gerais of Brazil, in Turkey, in Argentina, in Uruguay, in Paraguay, and nowadays we got 2 missions at the same time. This means our 2 missions that present themselves to remain, not to end, but to remain, to stay. And these are missions with the indigenous in Chaco, Argentina, and in Paraguay. This is a mission that shouldn't be interrupted, even though that we receive a very clear sign. But this is a mission to go on, to continue in Argentina and in Paraguay. And also in Greece, the mission that is taking place in Greece nowadays with the immigrants coming from the Middle East. This mission in Greece has no day to end. There in Greece and in Chaco, Argentina, the missionaries swap. One group comes from Greece, some other group goes back, but there's always missionaries in Greece because in there it is a center that must be permanent, at least until these days is like this, due to the immigrants that comes from the Middle East. Because the purpose of assimilating the souls, the essences, we got no limitation at all of receiving immigrants, of receiving beings from any part of the world, no matter from where they come from, they will be received. There is no politics, there any kind of intention of transforming what the line of the destiny is indicating, because the development has a meaning of destiny, a destiny that needs to be changed in something glorious, not in a destiny that takes the people to fall into an abyss. This in the meaning of something glorious of the destiny of humanity. And if we do not develop our inner world, we will never have the glorious future. So the missionaries stay with the more primary cases, in the most initial cases, or they are with those cases where people have to be regenerated, to think twice so many things, which means that the daily life of a missionary is very complex. The day of a missionary is very full of things, and if it's in there, truly in there to do its work, it nourished from the day. It never says, oh, I'm tired, I want to go back. It is in there nourishing, living that, evolving from that, and taking the others to evolve through that. So you see that this is something that goes beyond distributing material, food, clothes. It's something that goes beyond all of these things. Beyond this, all of these are necessary elements to the work, but the goal, it is absolutely not this one. The purpose is to develop the inner powers, those inner points that everyone has to develop. These are our missions, and I wish that this remains each time more clear so that we may enter in some other kind of mission, and you will receive news through Mother Maria Shimani of some other kind of mission that is being organized, that is happening in the United States. That's some other kind of mission, but it is also a mission, but it's some other kind of mission. Is a mission that goes beyond this material, this psychological help. It goes beyond the human help, beyond the charity, beyond this, because it is a mission with, it's a mission that is going through some other points, but we will see and talk about this in some other reunion. Now, let us give some characteristics of a missionary to may facilitate our comprehension. The missionary must be always looking for being simple. A missionary is a being that, if it's complicated, it has to go through a healing before being a missionary. Because a missionary works with simplicity. A missionary works with arriving, looking at something, to comprehend, to see, and doing. It goes back there, sees, change this, change that, and that's it. Simplicity. Simplicity. This is the first thing. And then it would have to count with the sixth ray within itself, to count with this fire of the sixth ray. So it should have the simplicity of not complicating things, of not thinking in a complicated way, because it is in there to resolve. It is not there to find complicated things. This word does not even exist. It gets to a place and resolves. And this, in order to do this, the missionary needs to have its own idealism, because by doing this, you don't know where you will end up, you don't know what will happen. So you need to have a lot of idealism and to be with this sixth ray very light up in order to work good. When the missions began, Mary requested in one mission that nowadays is taking place in Roraima, in Brazil and Venezuela, that in there the missionaries should be stay there and swapped. One group goes there after 2 weeks, return, and some other group goes back. And in this way, many go through this opportunity. They have the opportunity of finding very direct with certain necessities, and within this necessity to discover the way of touching the essence of the individuals. Because if you do not touch the essence, and if that essence did not wake up, nothing happened. You distributed materials, only that. But for that, you don't have to be a missionary. For you to be a missionary, you use these things in order to attain the real, to attain sometimes a redemption, sometimes a salvation, because the missionaries may find things very, very, very needy. And the mission needs to uplift these people from within, using the material beings, the concrete ways for this. But in there, this simplicity and this idealism are fundamental and basic things. And then the missionary must be permanently remembering to itself that it is there to serve and not to be served, and not to have resolve their own problems. A missionary is to serve. So it has to be the whole time confirming this to itself. Because when something happens that for the missionary is difficult, it has to remember, I am in here to serve, and that's it. Just go and serve, and there will give a solution to a subject, because everything in this world, everything in this humanity needs a service. This world is a world that needs service. This world lacks a spiritual service. So in here it needs to be permanently confirm this goal of serving. So when a situation that the missionary it is not used to, when a situation that you would never awaited, there you must have present the service, and on top of that to give thanks, to be very thankful for a situation had appeared that will teach you to serve better, because as much as that situation is unknown, as less as you know how to deal with it by your own experience, the better, much better for you, because in there you are developing. Look, this is the spirit of a missionary, you know. This is the spirit of a missionary. You had never heard or listened about any person that Mother Teresa of Calcutta impressed with some difficulty. She did a missionary order in the church itself that came from the Jesuitic line. So it was very hard to change this, but she did it. There is nothing as difficult. Well, and in here then to leave the devotion as an own element. If I stop being a devotee, I will lack of force, of strength, because I nourish myself of devotion. A missionary nourished by devotion. And in this way, it can be with 3 spoons of rice or with a full plate of rice. Because what nourishes the missionary, it is not only the rice, it is the devotion. In that devotion, when it takes the grains of the rice that has to eat, if it's going to eat that with devotion, that cereal shows energy, gives energies that cannot be given to someone that is eating for gluttony or just to killing the hunger. A cereal that came from a superior planet to here to nourish us, as some other cereals that came from some other planets to nourish us, right? And the plants, the vegetables also came here even from worlds where are no shapes, but they got a shape in here in order to nourish us. And we, having these vegetables in order to nourish ourselves, having minerals to nourish ourselves, even having this, we still kill animals to eat. We are a people that truly gives a lot of work for the evolutive law. A lot of work. But well, to live having as a main plate the devotion, this is a missionary. Now, a missionary having this present simplicity, idealism, the spirit of service and of devotion, it has what would need a lot, that is patience. Patience. But for a missionary to have that patience, the right patience, that patience in the point that it needs to be present. It needs simplicity, it needs idealism, it needs to be with the only idea of serving and to having the devotion at its own food. So in there it would have patience. And it is not necessary to us, to a missionary, to have patience, because if it's a missionary itself, it is patience itself. It is the patience itself, because it is dealing with the inner development of the people. And for you to deal with inner things, you need a sidereal patience. Like in the same way as the cosmos has patience with us, we need to have the patience of the cosmos to deal with all of this. The sidereal patience, this is a formed missionary. Well, and to remain devotee to what is looking for. What a devotee is looking for? Ask to them. They should be in there to serve and nothing else. They're not thinking in what they're looking for, I hope. They are in there to serve. They are in there to serve. They are in there to for their ideal. They are in there simple, in simplicity, and there that patience that they show. That's the patience. So if you would like to see a little bit of patience, if you would like to see a role of patience to imitate, you find a real missionary and you will see in there the image of the patience, because without it, it won't be working. Well, let us in here see a little bit the subject of the Legos, because there's no missionary who comes. If you think about Africa, if you think about the situation in Latin America, if you think about some other countries that it's better to leave them in peace. But if you think about this, you see that there won't be missionaries that arrive, and there are missionaries that are sent that should be sent to very unhospitable lands. Why, for example, a missionary in the Antarctica? Why not? It is that in the Antarctica there's nothing for a missionary to do. Why not a missionary there up in the north? Why not? Well, our questions maybe for a Lego to have an experience. Well, the Legos has a very important role in the missions. Not only the direct work of helping without being a consecrated missionary, without being a missionary that is totally in there for karmic matters or for some other individual things that belong to them, not to us. So the Legos can assume temporary and practical functions in the missions. So a Lego that would like to be introduced in this world of the patients, if the Lego would like to be introduced in this world, to look for a mission, because it can do temporary works, some certain things in a mission. We got a lot of Legos collaborators that accompany our missions. They were missionaries to that mission. The mission ended, they returned to their lives. But they experimented that. They were touched by that. The other day I talked with a person also that was a Lega that that stood some time in Roraima, and she returned totally transformed. So these Legos can have certain practice and temporary moments in the missions, and they can help to organize the temporary things. For example, a very good work for the Legos, because a missionary having to deal with certain things with not a lot of time, it must have someone must receive some help from a Lego in order to organize the temporary things, the vases, for example, for the missionary to work. Imagine, for example, in a mission together with the indigenous people, together with the immigrants, as these ones that we are trying to help, trying to resolve, the Legos are very useful in the temporary actions, in the actions of the not direct movements in the kitchen to help, for example, in all of the ways, and even to not be physically in the mission itself. You can be a Lego, a missionary Lego, a missionary that is helping from home, from your house. You can be helping from your house. You can be working for the missions. You can be collaborating for the missions. A Lego then is someone who basically works at the back and exceptionally or temporarily it is in the center of the problem of the action. But the one who is in there in the problem itself, or that one that is supporting, that is maintaining, that is helping indirectly home, are the same thing. And those Legos are also called the missionaries of heart, because they aren't missionaries of the physical body in there 24/7. They are missionaries of the heart, and is the language of the heart, and the proportion in that the heart is in a thing. It is not possible for us to talk about, but there are missionaries that are in the action itself, donated for that. A missionary that has nothing else to do, no any other goal to do that. And there are the missionaries of the heart. There are those that are at the back and that are maintaining everything. The Legos, for example, has a very important role when it's about to discover and creating ways to sustaining the missions. We are at this moment with a mission in the United States of America, and that has no time to end, and everything that was planned to maintain that mission is ending, and the mission is continuing for an undetermined time. So the Legos, or we are the Legos, we are those missionaries who are at the back. We need to create the ways for this mission to continue, because we would never think that a group of missionaries go to the United States, because in there's a group of the Sacred Mission, and this group of the Sacred Mission is in there with the counted resources for the task that was planned. But what happened was that was such a positive answer of the soul of the North American people. It was such a positive answer of certain collaborators from the United States that the mission was extended, and now it is necessary to get resources to maintain the mission. The mission now will continue in Oklahoma, where are problems that you will know better through a lecture of Mother Maria Shimani, spiritual problems of that 500 years had been happening in there. 500 years prisoned souls in there. So the mission is going to stay in Oklahoma to work in certain things, and then the mission would go to some other places in the United States. So we are invited to collaborate for this, for the permanency in the States shall happen, because there's no date for them to come back. And as they work and as they produce energy in the inner planes, the hierarchy has been given work for them. And in the United States, there is a lot to do, a lot to do. See, they aren't poor, they don't starve to death, they don't have physically illnesses, but they are in there needing a lot of things, a lot of help, a lot of missionary help. So we would have at this moment to look a little bit of this, to be informed, and to increase our ability for them to may continue in them as long as it might be possible. So the legos become a vital principle in the human society. In the human society is introduced a lego of this, of the missions. This changes this society. This begins to change the principles of society, because the human society, you know what it is. We live in it and we know what it is. But for you to be in the human society, living as a lego, you are, want it or not, changing the society. You're participating in the society, being different. So these missions have also an aspect of you to be living in a certain way as a lego within the ordinary human society. This is one of the hidden things of the missions. So the missions overcome the situations they live from the manifestation, giving a testimony of this. And the missions, our missions, they have the possibility of collaborating with priests of many religions. To collaborate with priests, it can collaborate with the shepherds, with the Protestant shepherds that are in there. It can collaborate with the professionals that are in there, to bring professionals here, because there are collaborators as doctors, as dentists. You cannot imagine the utility of a dentist, of an Orthodox, when he's dealing with the indigenous people, with the immigrants. It has a lot of work. In the world of the mouth, of the teeth, it's a world that influences a lot the people. A teeth influences the brain of someone. So you are dealing with the essence of someone. You are dealing with the mental formation of that person. And the dentist is removing an infection that was going to impel that being to usufruct of all of this, which means that, see how important the legos are in the missions and how welcome they are, even to spend 10-15 days, because those who come to stay there for 10-15 days, they work non-stop. And in there we would have to collaborate with all of this. And we are in here in order to give the information that you would like to get. You can be informed from the side of the fraternity, from the Grace Mercy Order, because the Grace Mercy Order has many monastics in there in the mission, and they are all very active. Thank God, they are all doing what they came to do in this mission. They recognize that it was what they came here to comply with. They weren't eluded. They didn't lose the flight. There are people that are living what they came to do in life. So let us help them, right? Good. Our next monthly lecture would be scheduled the 30th of January, that is Monday. And this lecture of the missionaries came through a request of some people that were watching this monthly lectures. So, to all of the watchers, know that the next one will come the 30th of January. all of this that was talked today came through the request of a lot of people who wanted to hear about this. So you, that you are accompanying this, that you are collaborating with this, send to us your ideas, because in this way we will have more freedom in order to know that we are doing living things and that they won't stay only in the theory, not only in this academic formation. Let us be in the practice itself. So what you would like to know to be developed, send us, tell us, and if God wishes, it will enter in the next lectures. And subjects aren't missing to us, because if we think about the planetary situation, the planetary and how the planet is nowadays, the dangers that we are going through, but all of this is something to talk about in some other lecture. So thank you all. Thank you all.